So I was watching Rick and Morty the other day when I realized something. This show has produced some absolutely legendary episodes that make other cartoon shows look like trash. Okay, I'm just kidding, I love Family Guy, but today we're diving into the greatest Rick and Morty episodes ever made, starting with A Rickle in Time. The episode picks up right where season 1 left off, with time still completely frozen. But here's the kicker, Rick, Morty, and Summer have been living in this frozen time for nearly 6 months, while Jerry and Beth are just stuck outside like statues. These three have been having the time of their lives, literally.
Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got. Just shake that ass, bitch, and let me see what you got.
Rick finally decides it's time to unfreeze everything, but he warns Morty and Summer not to touch their parents at all, or their existence might fall apart at the seams. No pressure, right? When time unfreezes, Mr. Benson falls off the roof. Meanwhile, Jerry and Beth are super confused because they expected the house to be destroyed, but it's perfectly fine. Rick just warmly greets Beth like nothing happened. Classic Rick gaslight. Beth tries to hug her father and kids, but they have to dodge her because touching would literally destroy them. So Rick just throws a pile of unmarked bills at Jerry and Beth and tells them to go buy ice cream. Problem solved. But then Morty and Summer start fighting over who's Rick's favorite grandchild. Their sibling rivalry literally creates a rift in time, splitting reality into two parallel timelines. Rick explains that their uncertainty has caused time to fracture into two equally possible impossibilities. To prove how screwed they are, Rick opens the garage door and reveals they're floating in a black void surrounded by cats. Because apparently when you break time, you get stuck with the most famous quantum physics thought experiment ever. Meanwhile, Jerry and Beth hit a deer with their car. The deer's injured but alive, so Beth decides to perform surgery on it at a veterinary hospital. But plot twist, there's a gunshot wound in the deer's side. A hunter shows up claiming he shot it first, so the deer belongs to him. He even brings his lawyer who explains something called Brad's Law. Beth just ignores all this legal drama and keeps operating anyway.
She normally works on horses.
Jerry, if you're not gonna help, get the f out of here. I will reach into heaven and yank your screaming deer soul back!
Jeez.
Back in the void, Rick tries to fix the timeline split using a time crystal, but Morty and Summer's continued uncertainty keeps breaking the fusion. Rick gets fed up and sits them down in front of a whiteboard to give them the most brutal grandfather speech ever.
And I honestly can't even tell the two of you apart half the time because I don't go by height or age. I go by amount of pain in my ass, which makes you both identical.
This clearly devastates both kids. But just when Rick's about to try the time fusion again, Morty makes a crack about Rick's drinking habits. This makes Rick uncertain. The fusion fails again, and now Rick thinks his other timeline self is trying to kill him. So naturally, Rick creates a gun out of his time crystal and starts having a shootout with himself across timelines. The chaos splits time again, creating 4 separate realities. It takes Morty knocking Rick out from behind and stuffing him in a dog crate to calm things down. Rick proves he's certain across all 4 timelines by calling himself and leaving a voicemail, then receiving 3 other identical messages. But then this 4th dimensional being appears and scolds Rick for trying to fix time with just a crystal. He gives them proper time stabilizing collars that actually work and fuses everything back together. But since Rick stole the time crystal illegally, they're all going to prison, time prison for eternity. Oops. When the being calls for backup, Rick grabs his gun, which is apparently named Chris, throws it outside, and Chris gets ran over by a car. Oh my god, poor Chris. This forces everyone to remove their collars and split time again. They keep splitting across multiple timelines and gang up on the 4th dimensional being, punching him across 64 different realities until he's defeated.
I'm defeated!
What's happening?
Back to the deer surgery, it wraps up when Jerry brings members to transport the deer across state lines, away from the hunter's legal claim. Except Jerry reveals later that these guys weren't actually from any institute. They were just employees from Cold Stone Creamery. But hey, it worked. Beth successfully saves the deer and it runs back to the woods. Finally, everyone tries to put their time collars back on. Summer works perfectly, but Morty's collar is faulty in one timeline. When Rick tries to fix it, Morty falls into the void and drops his collar. Rick dives after him and gives Morty his own collar, accepting that he'll be stuck floating in nothingness forever. In this genuinely touching moment, Rick tells Morty to be better than him, but then he spots Morty's collar floating below, scrambles for it while literally begging God for help.
Please God in heaven, please God, oh Lord, hear my prayers. Yes! You God, not today, bitch!
The episode ends with Jerry making fun of their time collars, while Rick admits that being the one getting mocked actually hurts. And in a nice callback, we see Mr. Benson survive his fall and is now in a wheelchair receiving roses. But wait, there's more. The post-credit scene shows two fourth-dimensional beings hunting for Rick through Earth's history. They mistake Albert Einstein for Rick, beat him up, and warn him not to mess with time. Einstein gets so angry about this beating that he discovers E equals MC squared out of pure spite.
I will mess with time. I will mess with time.
This episode is everything that makes Rick and Morty brilliant. It takes a simple concept like unfreezing time and turns it into this beautiful disaster of family dysfunction, quantum physics, plus any episode where Einstein gets jumped by time cops automatically gets bonus points. But let's jump straight into another absolute masterpiece, Rick's Team Minutes. So the Smith family is gathered around the TV watching some bachelor-style reality show, and Rick is absolutely disgusted by the quality of television. Jerry challenges him to do better, so Rick does what Rick does best. He completely destroys their cable box and replaces it with his own interdimensional cable that can receive TV shows from infinite realities, and the shows are absolutely wild.
You're pretty mean to me, but that takes the cake. I don't give a I'm Gazorpazorp field, bitch. Now give me my enchilada.
Rick's flipping through channels showing off these endless possibilities when suddenly the family sees Jerry on David Letterman, but in a reality where he's a famous movie star. Everyone gets super excited about this, which annoys Rick because he thinks they're missing the point. So he throws a pair of interdimensional goggles into the kitchen, and Jerry, Beth, and Summer immediately chase after them like kids fighting over candy. Morty stays behind and tells Rick he doesn't care enough about himself to see alternate versions, which Rick actually respects, so they just chill and watch bizarre commercials and clips from other realities while chaos unfolds in the kitchen. The three family members are taking turns with the goggles. Jerry sees himself doing with Johnny Depp, living his best life. Beth sees herself as a real surgeon operating on people instead of horses, fulfilling her actual dreams. But Summer, she can barely find any alternate realities of herself except for one, where the family is just playing Yahtzee. That's when she discovers the devastating truth. She was an unwanted pregnancy. She sees her parents achieving their dreams in reality where she was never born, and it completely destroys her. She tells them she's running away. This revelation also shakes Jerry and Beth, who start seeing how much better their lives could have been without kids. They decide maybe they should spend some time apart, because nothing says healthy marriage like interdimensional couples therapy. Summer goes upstairs to pack, and Morty tries to console her. She expects him to give her some cliche pep talk about a childhood drawing or something. But then Morty drops the biggest truth bomb in the entire series at Summer, and saying that he's not actually her real brother. He's from another reality where their original Rick and Morty are dead and buried in those graves. He tells her,
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
that line right there is peak Rick and Morty philosophy, wrapped up in the most casual delivery ever. While this family crisis is happening, Beth is still on the kitchen floor with the goggles, completely lost in an alternate self. The main TV shows alternate Jerry having a complete drug-induced breakdown. He's in his underwear, head half shaven, driving a mobility scooter down a freeway with police cars chasing him. Rick almost changes the channel, but Jerry yells at him to keep it on. They watch as this broken alternate Jerry shows up at alternate Beth's door, telling her he hated his life and regretted not staying with her. This moment hits Jerry and Beth like a truck. They realize they do love each other and want to embrace, deciding to stay together. The post-credit scene is pure gold. The family's watching news from Hamster and Butt World, asking Rick tons of questions about how that reality works. Rick gets so annoyed that he just opens a portal and says,
We're just gonna go there so you idiots can ask your stupid questions all day.
Oh, family vacation!
and we get this adorable photo montage of the whole family having a great time in Hamster and Butt World. Even Rick is smiling by the end. That just puts a smile on my face. Rick's 60 Minutes is brilliant because it uses interdimensional cable as a setup for the most emotionally devastating family therapy session ever. It's hilarious and heartbreaking at the same time, showing us that even in infinite realities, the Smith family's dysfunction is somehow universal. But wait, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Moving on, we have the episode The Vat of Acid episode. The episode starts with Rick and Morty flying to some factory for a deal. Morty's already suspicious that Rick might double cross him and is getting tired of Rick's schemes. Rick tells him not to worry because if things go wrong, he's got a backup plan involving jumping into a vat of acid. When they meet up with some intergalactic dealers, everything seems fine until the dealer dealer reveals they successfully scammed Rick. Rick gets so angry, he literally grows a third arm and shoots one of them in the head, but they're still outnumbered. So Rick and Morty are forced to jump into what looks like a vat of acid. Rick prepared this whole setup in advance with predetermined hatches at the bottom. They hide underwater while the dealers watch fake bones settle, but Morty gets impatient waiting for them to leave and decides to pop up and kill the dealers himself. Well, his aim sucks balls, so Rick has to take the gun and finish the job properly. After they escape, Morty starts complaining about Rick's plan and how Rick should be more open to other people's ideas instead of always doing everything himself. Rick fires back about how he handled the pickle situation alone and how Morty's dragon adventure was a total disaster. This escalates into Morty bringing up how Rick always ignores his ideas, specifically his request for a device that will let him save points in time like a video game so he could go back and fix mistakes. Rick agrees to make it, but when he was done making the device, he shoots Morty with a stun gun, then triggers a fake device and tells the confused Morty that he did it. What follows is Morty living his best consequence-free life for weeks. He's pulling his teacher's pants down, talking to Jessica, avoiding embarrassing moments, fixing bad decisions, and even saving himself from death. Classic Morty power fantasy stuff. Then Morty activates a safe before approaching this girl at a coffee shop. They hit it off, start dating, and begin this amazing long-term relationship. They go through ups and downs, even a breakup at one point, but come back stronger than ever. Then they decide to take a vacation together, but their plane crashes and they get stranded on a mountain range. Things get so desperate, they have to resort to cannibalism to survive. Morty treks across the mountain to find his backpack with the safe device, but when he finds it, he chooses not to use it. Instead, he uses his frostbitten hands to call for rescue. They both recover completely and have this beautiful welcome home party where they're happier and stronger than ever. True love conquers all, right? Wrong. Jerry mistakes the safe device for a TV remote and accidentally hits the button, resetting everything back to before Morty approached the girl. When he tries again, she pepper sprays him in the face, and in his pain, he falls on the device and accidentally saves that moment. So now he can't go back and try again. Completely depressed, Morty starts throwing himself to the gorillas at the zoo multiple times before finally going to Rick, ready to face the consequences instead of constantly resetting. But Rick drops the ultimate truth bomb. There was never any time travel. Rick shows Morty recordings proving that all his resets were actually him moving between alternate realities where different versions of himself died. Every time he reset, well, another Morty died and he took their place. Morty's horrified at the mass murder he's caused. Rick offers to fuse all the alternate universes together to fix things and reveals he's not even Morty's original Rick. When they merge back to the first save point with Morty's actual Rick, there are suddenly cops and protesters outside with anti-Morty signs because of all of the chaos he caused in other realities. Rick, determined to teach Morty a lesson, forces him to jump into the fake acid vat again, but just as Morty jumps in, his girlfriend from the mountain timeline shows up, sees him die, and leaves in tears. Morty hides at the bottom, releasing fake bones like before. Most people leave satisfied, but two cops sticks around because they're suspicious. When they drop a ladle in to test the acid, Morty tries to blow it up, but accidentally shoots one cop in half and splashes the other one with fake acid. Instead of realizing the acid is fake, the surviving cop concludes he must be immune to acid. He leaves happy, insulting his dead partner on the way out. Rick tells Morty the lesson learned is to never make fun of him again, ever. As they prepare to leave this reality, Rick mentions it was actually pretty nice.
I am gonna miss this place though. Johnny Carson's still alive and on the air, 9/11 never happened, and Rocky Road ice cream has peanut butter instead of marshmallows.
The post-credit scene shows the acid immune cop on Johnny Carson's show proving his immunity by getting lowered into real acid, where he dies a slow and painful death. Ooh, this episode is peak Rick and Morty stuff. No kidding, but we can't talk about the greatest Rick and Morty episodes without covering the legendary Pickle Rick, an episode that somehow manages to be both the most ridiculous and most emotionally devastating 22 minutes of television ever created. The episode starts with Morty getting ready for his school advice therapy session when he hears Rick's voice coming from the garage. He follows the sound and finds Rick has literally turned himself into a pickle.
I'm Pickle Rick!
When Beth and Summer shows up and see Pickle Rick, Morty immediately calls out the obvious. Rick did this to avoid going to therapy. There's this perfectly set up syringe hanging above Rick that would turn him back human the moment they leave. Rick denies this is about avoiding therapy and claims the syringe is irrelevant. But Beth knows exactly what's up, grabs the syringe, puts it in her purse, and leaves with the kids. The look on her face says everything. She's done with Rick's games. Now Rick's alone on the table as a pickle when this cat named Izzy shows up. Rick tries to warn the cat off, but the cat knocks him over anyway, pushing him outside where he's exposed to the blazing sun. But just when he's about to become a sun-dried pickle, a rainstorm saves him, only to flush him straight down into the sewers. This is where the episode gets completely unhinged. Rick creates a pickle juice to lure a cockroach towards him, kills it with a bite to the head, and uses the cockroach's brain to propel himself forward. Meanwhile, the family arrives at therapy, where we learn this session was recommended because Summer's been huffing pottery enamel and Morty wets his pants in class, both seen as signs they're struggling with their parents' divorce. Mr. Goldfold runs into them on his way out, casually mentioning he was there for eating poop and asking if they're there for the same thing. Only Rick and Morty would make that throwaway line feel normal. Dr. Wong, their therapist, starts the session, and Beth immediately makes excuses for why Rick couldn't attend. When Morty blurts out that Rick turned himself into a pickle, Dr. Wong uses this as a jumping off point to discuss why Rick would go to such extreme lengths to avoid therapy. Back in the sewers, Rick's building an exosuit out of decapitated cockroaches when a sewer rat attacks it. Rick sets up an elaborate trap, decapitates the rat, and creates a full rat exosuit. Oh, he looks so cool here. When more rats pour in, Rick goes full John Wick, killing every rat in sight with screws, box cutters, and whatever else he can find. The therapy session gets intense when Summer points out that Rick obviously lied to avoid coming. Beth completely loses it, dropping F-bombs at both Dr. Wong and her own kids. Dr. Wong observes how the family uses science as their primary form of communication and asks what's actually in the syringe. When the kids say it's anti-pickle serum, Beth gets even angrier and refuses to admit the obvious truth. Back to Rick, now wearing his disgusting rat part exosuit, uses rockets to blast through sewer pipes and lands in a building toilet with a heroic
Pickle Rick!
He starts looking for an exit and finds an elevator using his engineering skills to parkour his way to the button. But this building turns out to be some kind of agency, and Russian-speaking agents immediately start shooting at him. Rick runs into an office and starts building weapons out of office supplies like staplers, pencils, you name it. He proceeds to murder every agent in the building. The agency director, as a last resort, releases a captured fighter named Jaguar to kill Rick. Rick and Jaguar have this brutal fight where they both get wounded and end up bonding over their situations. Rick destroys all the cameras during their fight and calls the agency director, claiming Jaguar couldn't make it while threatening to hunt him down. The director offers $100 million in bonds, but Rick demands it go to Jaguar's daughter when she's free. When the director reveals she's already dead, Rick refuses to negotiate. The director kills his remaining guards and flees to the roof, where a helicopter is waiting. Jaguar ends up piloting the helicopter while Rick uses a cigarette to create an explosion that kills the agency director, and after talking about their family, Jaguar leaves Rick behind. Back in the therapy, the family starts using simple, honest language for once. That's when Rick shows up, covered in blood and barely alive, asking Beth for the serum. He finally admits he turned himself into a pickle because he doesn't respect therapy and didn't want to go. But Dr. Wong delivers one of the most devastating speeches in the entire series.
Because the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is, it's not an adventure. There's no way to do it so wrong you might die. It's just work. And the bottom line is, some people are okay going to work, and some people would rather die.
Rick has absolutely no comeback to this. The session ends with Rick completely speechless for once. On the ride home, Rick apologizes Beth for lying, and she finally injects him with the syringe, turning him back to human. Rick and Beth plan to get drinks while completely ignoring Summer and Morty, asking if they'll ever return to therapy. The post-credit scene shows Rick and Morty tied up on a giant piano, about to be killed by someone called Concerto. Rick apologizes for getting Morty into the mess and thinks they're definitely going to die. Then Jaguar appears out of nowhere, kills Concerto, and leaves. When Morty asks who that was, Rick says, "That, Morty, is why you don't go to therapy." Pickle Rick is brilliant. sucked, it was gross, and honestly, the whole exoskeleton thing was top notch. It was just perfection. But moving on for our final one in this video, it's the episode where it honestly left me so satisfied. And of course, it's the episode on Murden. The episode opens up with an extended flashback showing Evil Morty's entire journey, his betrayal of his Rick, killing multiple Ricks, kidnapping various Mortys, his schemes to become president of the Citadel, and his eventual escape from the central finite curve. We see him in the present dodging creatures in some strange dimension while gathering resources before retreating to his personal interdimensional oasis for some well-deserved R&R. But his peace gets interrupted when the protective barrier around his haven starts falling and alien creatures begin invading. He discovers the disruption is coming from an impressive space station in an undisclosed location. Cut to that space station where Rick and Morty are working together to track down Rick Prime. They're teleporting suspected Ricks into human-sized test tubes and straight up murdering them, but each one turns to be a decoy. Evil Morty portals into their lab and complains that their fracking of the central finite curve is messing with his peace. He suggests adjusting the scan arrays to filter for probability stasis, which actually works and brings in a different kind of Rick Prime. But Rick suspects it's a trap, while Evil Morty suggests Rick's just disappointed he needed help, especially from Evil Morty himself. Morty gets fed up with their bickering and tries to kill the Rick Prime they caught. Instead of being the real Rick Prime, it was a black portal fluid trap that sucks them into a prison specifically designed for Ricks who tried to track down Rick Prime. A video image of Rick Prime appears and drops the ultimate bombshell. After personally killing all these Ricks Dianes, he used something called the Omega device, and it is to kill Diane in every universe across infinity. He offers to let one Rick have their Diane back if they kill each other in a tournament-style battle royale. Despite Rick's warning that Prime is lying, the other Ricks start slaughtering each other anyway. Rick and Evil Morty teamed up to survive, and predictably, Rick Prime's promise was complete BS. Instead of bringing back Diane, he drops a bomb with Diane's face on it, which Rick and Evil Morty destroyed together. They combine their knowledge and resources to escape the prison and get to Rick's basement lab. Using the remaining portal trap fluid, Rick finally manages to track down Rick Prime's actual location. Evil Morty decides to stick around because the Omega device threatens him too, but Rick wants to handle the revenge personally.
Morty, you can't come! Evil Morty, stay out of my way! Gonna kill my nemesis!
Evil Morty warns Morty that just letting Rick kill Rick Prime won't end well for him emotionally, which convinces Morty to follow Rick along with Evil Morty. Rick arrives at Rick Prime's lair and fights through various drones to reach the main chamber housing the Omega device. He's annoyed that Morty and Evil Morty followed him, but Rick Prime appears and is actually impressed that dead wife Rick managed to track him down. Prime calls out Rick for using Diane's voice for his ship's AI and threatens to use the Omega device on Rick's family to demonstrate he kills Slow Mobius, who we learn is actually Rick's uncle. When the Omega device was used on Uncle Slow, Rick Prime actually dropped a tear himself. But then a brutal, vicious fight breaks out with Rick, Morty, and Evil Morty, combining forces against Rick Prime. Eventually, Rick and Morty gets knocked out, leaving Evil Morty to save the day. This was brilliant from Evil Morty. He swaps outfit with Morty and tricks Rick Prime by pretending to be Prime's original grandson, wanting a reunion. Evil Morty restrains Rick Prime and scans his mind, preemptively erasing all of Prime's backup clones to prevent any comebacks. He downloads the Omega device schematics, then drags in Rick's unconscious body and revives him, giving Rick free reign to get his revenge. Rick Prime warns Rick that he should stop Evil Morty while he has the chance, but Rick starts punching him instead. With his healing field deactivated from the fight, Rick Prime taunts Rick, saying he's become just like him in the end, as Rick slowly beats him to death. This was so brutal. Evil Morty disables the Omega device as Rick emerges covered in Rick Prime's blood. Evil Morty observes that Rick doesn't look satisfied despite getting his revenge. Even Evil Morty admits there's something different about Rick compared to all the others he's encountered and suggests he might find Rick useful someday, but he warns them again not to follow him as he leaves. Rick and Morty return home with Morty celebrating Rick Prime's defeat, but here's the sad part. Rick is completely disillusioned, having lost his life's purpose after finally achieving his revenge. He goes through his daily activities with 1,000-yard stare, mirroring Morty's state at the end of Rick Potion number 9. The post-credit scene shows Slow Mobius' widow emotionally spiraling after her husband's death, searching the galaxy for his murderer, seeking revenge just like Rick did after Diane's death. But unlike Rick, she encounters another being who also lost their spouse, and they become romantic partners, raising children together and moving on from their grief while still keeping their deceased spouses in their memories. More Chicken is incredible. It was beautiful because it delivers the payoff to Rick's revenge quest while showing that revenge doesn't actually solve anything. Rick gets everything he wanted and feels completely empty afterward. And also, I mean, seeing Rick and Morty and Evil Morty team up, when will we ever get to see something like that ever again? But anyways, that's all for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Comment down below on what you guys think we should do next. Click here for more Rick and Morty videos. Subscribe.